I'll tell you a few things about what I've done here. All the sewing, by the way, is very important to me. I've sewn, actually, you know, when artists say they painted since they were 3, I painted when I was born. I had a paintbrush in my hand when I was born. And you know, you always laugh, well, every kid paints. But I have to tell you truthfully, I have actually run a sewing machine since I was 4. Not obviously at this level, but I did, my first adventure on a sewing machine was at 4. My sister had no interest in it. However, in case that glorifies that part of my development, I had not spoken a single word until I was 4. So what was going on exactly, who knows? My mother said, due to the fact that I have never shut up since, I must have been waiting till I had thing, and the plane is crashing and burning, and people are running all over the place, and she's just, oh my, you know, I don't know, I thought it was, now I did, of course, I replaced I got rid of the person who authored the book, so I have no need for his name any longer, so I put my own in.
Didn't have to sign it.
No, that's I finally resolved that problem. Because there's times where if you sell something, if you don't have a signature, people won't buy it.
Mm-hmm.
They make you sign it. And sometimes they won't even let you sign it on the back. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, I know how to take dark gray and sign it in a black area so that it's really fun. I like my name there, but I don't think there's any way I could have signed it and liked it. But I like that because it's a part of the structure of the piece. I attempt to paint them all a little different too. I have not read every book that I work from, but I have them all, and I have a very large library. I'm somewhat obsessed about these books, probably. I hope that my son and his wife and kids will maybe get a little more interest before I head off, and won't have to figure out what to do with them, because I don't know who else wants a grand collection of youth books. These aren't even children's books; they're youth books, and that means they have to actually read, not just look at pictures. So it's and I still have a few. Most of my possessions were lost in a fire when I was 18. So I really didn't have anything left, except for I had a few books that were somewhere else in the house. I don't remember, but so I've recollected a lot of these. Let's see. What else would you? Yeah, I did these with thread. Actually, thanks to James, I have a new roll. Cotton string is very difficult to find now. You can find synthetic polyester, and that's no value to me. So I take it apart, and I sometimes 2 or 3 of the little strings, and I fold it back together. I then dip that in paint, and that's how I make my grid. Now, I have done it on very large canvases by myself, but I no longer do that because it's just, I go into comatose after doing a large canvas now. It's just, it takes me like 3 days or something to do it by myself. So I have somebody else help me now, and we dip it. So this is all different colors, and you'll see some mistakes in that, which I like. I got to the point where I was painting dots, because I've painted so many zillions of dots, that I could do them almost the same way. I could mix the paint, I would dip the same brush in, I cut the bristles the same way, so I dip it in. I almost think I was making the same dot. It was almost looking printed. I have no interest in that. Otherwise, you'd print it. I'd be Lichtenstein. Why bother? Painting, it's painful. So I would do all kinds of things. I'd hold the brush differently. I'd use my left hand, but my left hand took a lot more training. I even got to the point where the angle was changed. So I tried to do it differently each time in a way, and that one is painted differently than this one. Each one I have attempted to paint slightly differently. They take a lot of time, by the way. They're because there's no one, even like the green in her dress, there's probably, I don't know how many variations, but there's a lot of greens. And even when I make the decision is not seemingly important, I'm looking at that and then I put that dot in, and sometimes it's a long time putting that, and then I look at it and I change the color a little hair, and and you'll never see it, but I do it. And I like painting. I like this act. And I wish sometimes that I could hire somebody to do it with me so that I could actually produce a few more, but I can't. It's not possible, and I enjoy putting it on. All the grids are a little bit different, and of course when I put the grid on here, I didn't want to paint it. I looked at it for probably at least a month, because the grid was beautiful. And I thought, God, this is beautiful. This is just enough for me. But I fought that idea, and I went forward. I would go and buy a couple new shirts at Goodwill for 25 cents. They just come from the cleaners. They were somebody else's, but they were fresh, cleaned, ironed, and then I would go to the auction and buy a box of books for $5, take the ones out and sell the rest. It was sort of like book dealing on a very low level, but I survived. Anyway, these, they all come from mostly youth books, except for the two playbills, of which there were a whole series, but and they all have a different involvement, but Hardy Boys was a big part of my life growing up. I loved the Hardy Boys, and when I found out that Franklin Dixon was not a real person, the author, I was really disappointed, and unfortunately I did not find that, or fortunately I did not find that out in my youth. I found it out when I was an adult. And my best friend's father was good friends with a guy named Leslie McFarland who wrote them. And so I got all involved in it, and I had a friend whose child was paralyzed and in the Rusk Center. So I brought over books, Hardy Boy books to him. Well, I had to start reading them again because we couldn't discuss them because I couldn't remember the stories, of course. And so then I had to read, and he started reading really fast because he loved them. And so before you know it, I'd read 7 Hardy Boy books in a row in about 3 weeks. And these stories are kind of, they're great, but they're little, you don't need to read 7 in a row. You need to mix it up with a Kafka in between, or a Hampson or something that, bring the dark side. And, but anyway, all of these, with the exception, again, as I say, there's a few exceptions here, the 2 abstract pieces. Those are sewn without any conception in terms of any drawing or any control. I just simply put the piece of paper down and I do the drawing until it's finished. I do not ever go back to it. It's a one-sitting experience. Now these over here are certainly not, because there's so much more involved, and I can't do it in one sitting because there's days involved. I have done probably hundreds of those over the years. Those are the oldest. The blue one that has the little opening. And also, there's no glue, there's no nothing. I just sit down and I put it there and I start sewing. And the same with the Private Lives and Home. All of those circles are done completely freehand. Well, freehand. Obviously, I create little systems that I play with on the sewing machine and ways of doing it, but it's just going around and around. There's no drawing whatsoever on those. And I respond to the play, the story, the title, and the image after buying those. The Red Gate, which is this thumbtack piece, is called the, I got confused tonight because I said somebody, I think they're the 1180s. There's over 1,000 thumbtacks in that page. And each one of them is painted individually, and there's a thumbtack under each portion of the cut-up book jacket. That was the first book jacket I used because I went out to clear out the house, my parents' house in Seattle, and Seattle it rains, and it's damp and miserable, horrible climate. And all the books were mildewed, and it was very sad. I'd throw them all away, but I kept the jackets. So here I come back to New York, I've got 80 jackets. And all these books I have to throw away. So this was the first piece, and there's a big painting that I have up at Northampton that's 5 by 7.5 feet. That's all made with dots, and it's of that image. But that was literally the first, and that is the actual book jacket. So that's done. So that means that image is complete.